Hello and welcome to episode 137 of Inspired Good Vet Life. And we are so glad you're here. And I could hardly sleep last night because I was so excited about my guest today, who I will introduce in just a moment. But first, I have to do my shameless plug for Good Vet Life magazine. You can go to goodvetlife.com and read all about it. And our events, we've got some really cool stuff happening. It's like daily. And you can get a magazine to read or digital. And it's like your trusted best friend. And that said, I want to introduce Jason Tracy with Lion
Roar.
I'm sorry,
Consulting.
Roar.
Yeah,
I'm looking at your
lion.
That happens. I'm sorry, but
it's just associated with the lion.
With Roar, is it Roar?
Roar Consulting is my company's name. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And you have such a radio voice. I mean, your voice is like perfect for the radio.
But right? You know what's so funny is like, and we're going to talk about a little bit about vulnerability and stuff, I'm sure. But I was always self-conscious of my voice. One, as a kid, I was always told to be quiet, always talk in the 1 foot voice and stuff. And it was, this is my voice. And there's just a lot of things I'm self-conscious about. And then it really ties into how the company got named. I knew I wanted to start a business. I knew I wanted to go out and be a speaker. I knew I wanted to coach and impact people's lives from a sales and leadership standpoint and help people grow their businesses. One day I went to a chamber event out in Clarkston, and there was a really crowded chamber event, and it was loud. And the chamber they were trying to get everybody to sit down and eat. And I was having this conversation, and I see this older gentleman in his 80s walk across from the other side of the room, and he comes up to me and he taps me on the shoulder, and he said, "Son," he's like, "I heard your voice all the way in that corner, from over in that corner in this crowded, loud room." And I'm like, oh man, this guy's going to chew me out for my voice, right? He's like, "I just want to tell you, your voice is a gift from God, and you need to share it with as many people as you can."
Oh my gosh.
And that was just that last sign for me that it was time to go. It was time to go.
That's an amazing story, right?
It is.
And you like listen to it. So one of the things when we just kind of met, people have been trying to get us together for the last year. Yeah. Right. You need to meet. And so we finally met. And so it's like,
and we met yesterday.
We met yesterday. and it was like fortuitous. It's like I wasn't concerned about who my guest would be today because I knew it was coming. The perfect person was coming, and that goes back to the intuition thing, right?
Yep.
Which we were talking about. It's like, again, I never knew I would be having a magazine and a wellness company and all of that, and all those wonderful gifts along the way. But this voice in me is just so loud saying, you got to do this.
You got to do it.
So tell me about, you have some stories to share, and, you have your Roar Consulting.
Yes.
And so your sales training, is that what you primarily do?
Yeah. So sales coaching, I coach solopreneurs, the people that start their business because they have a purpose, a passion, or an expertise. And then they get out there and they realize, one, they've maybe never sold, or they have a limiting belief around themselves, or they have a stigma around what sales is, and it just holds them back. A lot of them are heart-centered people that they end up giving their stuff away for free, and then their vision dies and they end up going back and getting another job, right? And so I love working with those people, empowering those people to live their vision. And then I work with bigger companies that are scaling that I work with and plug in and develop their sales teams.
Okay. All right. But you came to this. I mean, I love your backstory, how you came to do this, and it just fits so much with Good Vet Life. Our whole mission is to connect people. Yeah. Right? And connect people to be their very best selves. And so it started with food, with fat, and health and wellness, but it's bigger than that. It's how we think and how we show up every day. So talk to that. And you have a story to tell about.
Well, it is the mindset. And I have a mantra. You'd ask me if I have any catchy phrases, and it's like, well, I do have this thing. and I have a mantra that I live by. It's called Eat Faces. And the first time I came home and told my wife this story, she almost made me sleep on the couch because it sounds so violent. And when I said it to you, you were like, huh?
Yeah.
Eat Faces, what is that? And so what it is what Eat Faces is, it's a story that I'll share, but what it really is surviving and thriving in spite of the circumstances. Every day, things happen in life. You talked about 2020 and the things that are going on there, but then you've still found a way to get your podcast growing, right? You still found a vehicle to do it. And so even though there was this limitation, this thing, many of us will sit and wish that thing away, and we spend all of our time and our energy on the things we can't control. There's only one thing we can control. It's the way we respond. It's our attitude upon things. And so this story kind of spurned. I was a sales director for a company, and when I started with this company, it was bankrupt. They were millions of dollars in debt. And over the course of the years, I developed and trained and just really became one of the top companies within our industry. And one of my big goals was to win Franchisee of the Year within our franchise, because we were a company we were in Michigan, but our company was based in New England, and there was like 500 owners across the country. But every single year it was an owner from New England that won, and every single year it was a male. And the owner of our company, Debbie Allen, she was a radiant power female, and I wanted her to win, you know. Okay. And I wanted to win too, but I wanted her to win, and I wanted to be the first to win it that wasn't in New England, like break up the good old boy network, right? And so one year we go, and I always brought my whole leadership team with me because I wanted them to get the power of what's outside of that box, right? What the bigger mission of what we're working on. So they got to come to the conventions with me, and so we won Franchisee of the Year. And I didn't even expect it. It was super cool. My boss knew, and so she let me go up and accept the award because she knew it was my big goal. And so super awesome. But everybody that night was a big celebration. And the top leaders from the franchise, the top executives from the franchise were taking us out, and we had top owners from the franchise, and along with just different other owners and people from the industry, right? And so at one point, I get cornered in this bar by this guy who's an owner out in New England, but he was not a successful guy. And he was sitting and telling me all the reasons why he wasn't successful. And he was listing off the reasons, and there's no responsibility, no look in the mirror, no, I could have did this and taken this or done that. It was all everybody else's fault. The franchise, they told him they were going to make him successful. They wooed him in. They told him they were going to give him all the tools and resources to make sure they empowered him, and he was going to be the successful business owner. And we were an agent of Verizon. He was like, Verizon only cares about you if you're hitting numbers and goals, and so they don't give us the support that we need. And my people, they steal from me, and it was just one thing after another. Oh my gosh! Right?
And you're just like, oh my, how do I get out of here?
I spent too much time in my early life being a victim.
Okay.
I held myself back from so many things, and so when I see that, it just makes my skin crawl, because I know what I had to do. There's a big difference between sympathy and empathy. Sympathy's like, oh my God, Sherry, that's so sad. Oh man, maybe you should give up. Maybe it's just too tough. Empathy's like, I hear you. I've been there, and this is what I had to do. This is what you have to do. You got to be able to pick yourself back up. You can't say, go home and rest. And then, maybe it'll be better tomorrow. Like, what's going to make it better tomorrow?
Right.
And so we were in this loud bar, and I got fed up with it. And so I kind of went off on this rant, and I said, listen, man, I get it. Not all the stuff you're saying, I completely validated. I took over our company in 2008. It was towards the end of the recession. We were millions of dollars in debt. We had all these things. And when we joined the franchise told us the same exact thing. I remember like yesterday, the owner coming in so excited about this franchise. They were going to give her support, and they were going to make her successful. In Verizon, you know what? They do only care about you if you hit numbers, but they don't make it hard. They tell you exactly what they want you to do, right? And so I know that at the end of the day, no one's going to come along and care about me eating. No one's going to care about whether Jason Tracy's successful. And if I just sit on my hands and wait for the other factors to come in and save me, I'm going to starve. And at the end of the day, I'm a face-eating lion. If it comes down to me eating or my people eating, I'm going to eat faces. I'm going to do what has to be done in order for us to survive and thrive. And it probably would have died there. It was like, I'm in this loud Chicago bar. I swear it's like the music stopped. As soon as I'm in this rant, and I had my whole leadership team with me, and everybody turned around and was like, yeah, face-eating lions, that's what we... And it was like this whole thing, and it became a mantra for the year. We ended up having a better year the next year than we did that year that we won Franchisee of the Year. And then that next year I left and started my company. And when I left, my leadership team got together, and they got me this really cool book. And it's just pictures of our experiences and times together. And then at the beginning, they had this really cool couple paragraph, like who they were when they met me, and who they transformed to be. And at the end, it said, and at the end of the day, we're face-eating lions because we met you. And it was just really cool and really
Wow.
powerful. And I remember telling that story to a client one day, and he was like just super motivated by it. He was like, eat faces, and it became his mantra. And so I just kept on sharing the story, and now that's kind of how it rolled out.
Eat faces. That's great. Well, and then you have a lion. I'm looking at this.
I have a lion.
Right?
Most of my shirts do say eat faces somewhere along them.
That's powerful, but it is. You're right. It's I teach character self mastery.
Yeah.
To students in Detroit, primarily in Detroit. And we always say it's around being successful regardless of your circumstances, because we all have circumstances.
We do.
And it's not like linear, right? It's like every day you've got highs and you've got lows, and you've got things that can just derail you, and we get to choose.
Yep.
So it's, I get that, but it's like a mantra.
Well, and it reoccurs, like you said. It's always, it's 2020, March 2020 is cruising up, right? And I was hitting a stride. I started my business in January 2018, so a couple years in, and I had this first big client that I had landed that was not, they were weighing down the business. They were not the direction where we were going. It was, my wife was working with their company. She was part of the business, and it was stressing her out. And so I fired that client because I'd gotten enough other clients to replace what they were bringing in. And so I had fired that client.
That's a nice spot to be in.
It's a nice spot to be in. A week later, the world shuts down.
Okay, got it.
And half of those clients, or more than half of those clients, got shut down. They couldn't even operate business, and so they didn't keep coaching. So overnight, I'm like, wow, I'm a small business that serves small businesses, and more than half my clients just got shut down. They don't even know where their next dollar's coming from. What am I going to do? And I started to panic for a minute, and then I started realizing, wait a minute, this is going to be a time where people need me more than ever. They need hope, they need light, they need support. And it may not be a time about making money. I have to figure out a way to survive through this. But if I can pull in, if I can pour into my clients that I have, if I can pour into my community, if I can brand myself and create content and get myself out there, and then just serve people, I can take this as an opportunity. And that year, the clients that stayed, they had their best years in business ever. I'm not just saying just 2020. I had a guy that had been in business for over 20 years. And 2020 was his absolute best year. And at the beginning of everything, he was ready to jump off a bridge. He was like ready to close up and wave the white flag. And so to get through that, that grew my confidence. It grew my testimonials. I got referrals out of it. And it just was able to grow my brand, my business, so just being able to stick with the speaking events. I didn't charge for anything that I was doing. I just wanted to go out and support as many people, but it helped me grow. Now people know who I am.
Right. And it's so interesting when you can have that perspective.
Yeah.
Right? And it's a choice.
It's a choice.
And that's the part that I think is so exciting, that like your victim person that you started with, haven't learned or don't get, is at the end of the day, it's all a choice. I've read some memoirs of people like in prison camps.
Yeah.
And one guy, I forget the guy's name, he was an admiral, but he was in prison camp for like 7 years and 5 months and 37 days or something like that. But when asked about his experience, he goes, I realized that I got to choose what I thought. At the end of the day, they could take everything away from me, but nobody could take away my choice to think what I chose to think, the thoughts I chose. And it comes down to that over and over again, right?
Yeah.
It's so powerful.
We create our worlds.
Yeah.
We create, like, if you don't like what's going on, you can recreate that. And there's a lot. I've done a lot of personal development. People have come into my life, and the people have changed me the most, right? The people are our greatest resources. But there's this one moment, there's this stupid TV show out. Not even stupid. Seinfeld is the best TV show ever.
Okay.
But did you watch Seinfeld?
Some of it.
Okay. So there's a string of episodes where George Costanza, who's the lovable loser, he goes through this string of episodes where he's doing the opposite of his natural instincts. And it all starts off, he comes into the cafe that they normally meet at, and he starts off and he's like, Jerry, where did it all go wrong? I had so much promise. And they all just kind of laugh because he's never probably really ever had any promise. And so he's just kind of lamenting about how miserable his life is. And he's like, every time I thought I was making the right choice, every time I thought I made the right decision, it always led me to the wrong outcome. And so Jerry quipped, what if you did the opposite of your natural reaction? And they said they had a little dialogue back and forth on that. And then so George took action. He ordered a sandwich that was completely different than what he would normally order, the complete opposite of what he'd normally order. And when he ordered that sandwich, there was an attractive lady at the bar that turned around and looked at him. And Jerry's like, hey, did you see that? She checked you out. And he's like, yeah, Jerry, what am I going to do? Walk up to her and say, hi, I'm George. I'm balding, middle-aged. I live in my parents' basement. And I don't have a job. And Jerry's like, well, what'd you normally do? He's like, I'd normally go up there and lie and tell her about all the things I have going on. He's like, well, what normally happens? So he goes up to the bar and he's like, hi, I'm George Costanza. I'm balding. I live in my parents' basement. I don't have a job. And she's like, well, hello. And then introduces herself. And they go on a date. And it ends up he gets a job with the Yankees. I was sitting there in my victim mentality and just looking for an answer. And it just kind of was a light bulb moment of like, wow, it's my decisions that have gotten me to this point. It's no one else. I could blame my dad. That was, I could blame all the circumstances that have happened in my life. And I did. But at the end of the day, my dad committed suicide at 43. Right. And so my dad, I started thinking about it. I'm like, my dad was the victim. He didn't think that he could change. He didn't get to see me grow up. He didn't get to see us really grow up and grow into the men that we are. He didn't get to meet his grandkids. He didn't, he ended his life and he thought he was all alone. And at the time he was. He probably would have been for the rest of his life because he never changed, right? I had the ability to go out and have a great family. My biggest motivators were how I grew up with my dad, and I wanted to be the opposite of that.
Right.
And so I had that power. And so I started looking at things differently, and it was just that little thing of like doing the opposite. Wow, if what I'm doing, the decisions I'm making right now are getting me to here. What if I started making the opposite decision?
That's just so amazing, right? And powerful. And as you're talking, I'm thinking, and we had a conversation recently with a woman who's in her 40s, which is like my kids are in their starting into their 40s, and she said, it's so nice to see like you and your age group and your peers excited about your day. Yeah. Really excited about your day because she goes, it shows me that getting older is not the, kiss of death. Yeah. Or it's not, I have to experience everything now because it's just going to go downhill. And I thought about that, right? Yeah. And I thought about that's so true. In Good Fat Life, it's totally about we teach what we need to know. I love that idea, but it's all about how do we make those thoughts, make those choices, fuel ourselves, whatever, so that we can have that enthusiasm until we take our last breath. Whenever, yeah. And how exciting is that?
It's so exciting because, again, no matter what's going on, you do create your reality. I'm 44, and I feel pretty good about
so you're like where I'm at.
But it's one of those things, people, my biggest pet peeves in the world is, and this is just average language, when you ask people how they're doing, they're like, not too bad. I'm like, not too bad? What does that mean? Like yesterday you were chewing glass and so today's okay? Like not too bad? But it's so common and we all go through life like not too bad. Living the dream. Like when I walk in places, I'm like, I'm living the dream. Yeah. Like in there because it's curious. Somebody asked me earlier, like, how are you? I'm fantastic. And it's, it's one of those things. It's when you have that vibe, it changes your outlook on people. When you're just going through life like not too bad, okay, living the dream. People want to get away from you as fast as possible. They don't have any intrigue about. Tell me more about that.
Tell me more about eating faces. We've started a section in the magazine called More Wonder, Please, and it's been really fun to just be mindful of those things that happen to us, and they happen to all of us all day long, where it's like, wow, that was really cool. Yeah. Right? Whatever it is, just a simple thing. It can be a simple thing like the last week, the flowers were in the air everywhere, right? Yeah. And it reminded me of those fairies in Fantasia as they were flying through, and I just paused and I thought, oh my God, that's so cool. Now, granted, I don't have allergies, so I wasn't sneezing and coughing, but it's just a reminder that all day long there's that stuff that's happening that makes the day magic.
It is. I had somebody that was on one of the sales teams that I lead for my clients, and we operate off in the EOS system, and in the meetings,
I love that.
part of
Yeah.
it is the first thing we do is we say our positive focus for personal and business, things that are going on good in their life. And there's one person that no matter what could never say something that was good happening in their life. And that was like, there was obvious that she wasn't going to last, you know?
Right.
But it was like, you woke up and you're breathing today. She's like, I guess. Like, no, if you're not happy about that, you know, like it's the little things. I get so happy with just the little things. I love walking in my downtown, hearing the birds chirp, like just look at the little beautiful things in life and wake up.
I know. And it sounds so, in some ways it sounds so cliche.
Yeah.
Right. It gets, and it's not. It's just flat out not. And so, and I know when I've read studies that when people are happy and people around them aren't happy, happy people are annoying.
Yeah. Yes.
Are really annoying. And so it's like being mindful about that. It's like, okay, you know, you can go be unhappy over here.
Well, when people ask all the time, how do I create a culture in a company? How do I create a culture for my business? If you create a culture of happiness, the people that are not happy will remove themselves. They're like, I can't stand being around these people, and they will leave.
And that's true. And that's true. So, well, I love the Eating Faces and what it's done for you. And it's obviously, hearing some of your backstory, you've really come through some really difficult circumstances. And
we all have our own difficult circumstances, but yeah, you know, it's something that I've prided myself on. It's like the fuel for, you know, like I've always proving the people wrong or proving this, you know, like, having that chip, and like, it's one of my greatest accomplishments in life is having my son and my family, and just, you know, creating that happy life versus thinking about what my childhood was like.
Right. Right. Because we all have our stories.
Yeah.
Right. We all have our circumstances, and you're right. We get to choose. And I loved how you said, what stories are data with a soul? Stories are data with a soul.
And I had tried to think of a way to verbalize this for so long. And then one day I was listening to The Power of Vulnerability by Brene Brown, and she had said, stories are data with soul. And it's like, that is it. We can learn so much from the stories we hear from other people, which is why I have my podcast, Coffee and Grit, because I'm sitting down with entrepreneurs and hearing their story, their journey, their struggles, the things they bump their head on. And there's so much data in there for me to learn from. I found out myself learning from it. And so it's like, I'm going to sit down in a podcast and get this out for other entrepreneurs to hear those stories too. And it's changed people's lives.
So, well, and to that point, that's why I'm loving hearing what you have to say, because again, Good Fat Life, it's really about how we create the life that we want, right? And so, and we all know that if you hear stuff from your parents, it's just like blah, 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 right?
Yes.
But you can hear the same thing from somebody else, or just in a different way, or you're in a different mood, and suddenly it's like, I get it. Or it changes, it shifts a little bit. And so that's why, to your point, I love talking to people and hearing their stories, because you never know the magic that's going to come from that.
Can I share a little scientific tip on how people can shift? Because it really comes down to, like, if you think about a tuning fork, we're going to find there's so many things going on in life. There's so many things going on right now at this very second. There's an infinite amount of possibilities of what's going on. And so our minds can't conceive and process all of that. And so we do three things. We delete, distort, and generalize information. And there's a part of our DNA, our physiology, it's called the reticular activation system.
Right, okay, yeah.
Right, and that's the filter that helps us identify what is important. And so take a journal, and take a documentation of how you're seeing the world. Right? Because that is the difference in how you're getting past tragedies, traumas, just the everyday life, is how you perceive what is going on in the world. And so we think about, this is the best comparison. If you go and search a pair of shoes online, right? And then you go to Facebook, that pair of shoes is up in the ads. And then you go to Instagram and that pair of shoes is popping up on a post, and it follows you everywhere. The reticular activation system does that same thing for us. And so if you think about a car, you know, for me, here's an example, and talking about stories, I have a Harley. And before I got my bike, I thought that Brighton was not a biker town. I didn't think anybody had Harleys. When I got my bike, all of a sudden I'm like, wow, I live in a biker town. There are so many bikes. I can hear them everywhere. I'm like, I drive downtown and they're parked everywhere. It was like, when did Brighton become a biker town? Was it because I bought a bike? That I was a trendsetter? It wasn't that I was a trendsetter, but all of a sudden now it's important to me. It's in my realm. Now my reticular activation system says, oh, hey, Harley, check that out. So now it's there in my awareness. It's the same thing if a friend buys a car and all of a sudden you see that car everywhere, or same thing, you bought that car, right?
Right.
And so if we think about that, what do we want to focus on? If we're focusing on the things that we're not versus what are we, right? Or, we think
it's
about
the same. Yeah, you're right. It's the exact same thing. So if you think of what you're not is equivalent to a red car, you're going to just see that reinforcement of everything you're not.
Everything we're not.
Where if everything we are, my grandma had this little poem. She always said, she goes, I love myself. I think I'm grand. I think I'm grand. Sometimes I even hold my hand. And I just, it's been coming back to me a lot lately. And there's something kind of magic about that.
Yes.
So if you think about all the things you love about yourself,
yes,
it's going to show up everywhere.
But how many of us are sitting and writing down what we love about ourselves?
Well, we don't.
We don't.
Because it feels uncomfortable or awkward, or we just don't.
I have a real problem with the word humble and how we perceive that in life, that we think that being humble means that we can't celebrate the good things about us, because 90% of our thoughts are the things that we're not. How we mess up, or how we're not fast enough, big enough, fat, whatever it is, good looking enough, whatever we feel that lack is, we focus so much on that. What are we going to get when we go out there? If we're spending all of our time in that, our reticular activation system is programmed to find the evidence. Our minds are excellent servants, but terrible masters. If we're leading our mind to go out and lead us, right, it's gonna look for evidence that we're dumb, that we're fat, that we're not likable, that we're whatever it is that we're thinking. We're gonna find that evidence. Yeah. If I know I'm a good listener, or if I know I bring a certain energy to conversations, and when I go out there and I project that, now other people are saying that about me. Right. Like I'm projecting what I see in myself. I'm honing and I'm focusing on the things that I know that I'm really good at. And that's what people see.
Yeah. Oh, my brains are spinning now again. So, okay. So if I'm going to take a quick commercial break, right? And a shout out for our sponsor. So I am just a huge fan of Snedicor's cleaners. They are part of my self-care. And full disclosure, I wanted to wear leggings today, and I didn't have a top I could wear with leggings that had been ironed. I don't know. I've been wearing them, and I hadn't gotten them to the cleaners. So I had to wear something wrinkled and wear a jacket over it, because I have been traveling and hadn't been putting my yellow bags out on the porch this week. And because Snedicor does all my dry cleaning and ironing. And today I was just like, oh my gosh, bigger gratitude to the role that they can play in our lives and our self-care. So knowing with confidence that we can go to our closet at any moment and find something ironed and ready to go to wear. So Snedicor's cleaners, and you just drop the yellow bag on your porch, and 2 days later it shows up. And if you need it that day, they have that service available at your fingertips. So thank you.
That sounds excellent, actually. The whole like ironing and having wrinkles, and
it's just but that's the other thing too with Good Fat Life. We're always looking for ways. Self-care, we hear this like buzzword of like it's having a manicure or a pedicure.
Yeah.
It's something going and having it done for you. But part of it is having things done for you that you just don't want to take the time or have the energy to do.
We've got to feed back into ourselves. And, if we're walking around wrinkly, we're probably feeling wrinkly,
Exactly.
If you like the littlest things, if I have new socks and underwear, I feel like a brand new person, like it's like walking around with a new confidence. It's the little things.
It is the little things. And you're right. It's that they can undermine our little mindset so quickly. So, so we're always
you're operating at a deficit. You're operating with an apology, right? Like you're going to a networking event.
That's an interesting way to do it. That's an interesting way to see. Yeah. An apology. Huh. Okay. So what would you say, I'd like to just kind of like wrap up. So what would you say is a good starting point for people to just take that next empowerment step? What's your favorite? So
this is just a quick, easy thing that you can do at home. I love doing this with my clients. We talked about the whole story, right? Tell a story. If you're in business and you're trying to figure out who your target clients are, who you serve, how you solve problems, think of your favorite client, the favorite person you've ever worked with. How did you meet them? When you met them, what kind of challenges were they going through that relationship? How did you? What happened? What were the results? Like, what was that impact? Why are they your favorite client? All those different things, you start adjusting and seeing all the positives versus thinking, why did that go wrong? We think about the sale that we missed and we're really dwelled into this thing. Well, maybe they just weren't the right client, because it's okay to have one that not have fits and have people to tell you no, right?
Because that's normal.
It's normal.
We have different personalities.
Yeah. Here's a good example. I had a client that told me the reason why she wasn't successful in her business is because she wasn't creative. She was a very logical person. She saw things black and white. She saw the numbers, and she wasn't creative, and that's why her business was failing. And so, mind you, when I met her in a loud networking event, and she had shared a story with me about the work that she does, and she shared this story about this little boy that she impacted, and I'm in this loud event, and it made me cry. It brought tears to my eyes. And I said, wow. And I had her on my podcast, and she shared many beautiful stories that made me cry in this podcast. And so I said, but I know, but the reason why you're in this room is because you have so much creativity. You shared these stories. You literally made me cry in a loud event. She's like, well, I'm good at telling stories though. She thought she had no creativity. She said, I have zero creativity. Well, I'm good telling stories. I'm like, well, what's telling stories? And she was like, oh, well, I guess it's creative. I didn't really see it that way. She was thinking of creative as like drawing and being artistic and like having these ideas. And so I'm like, the other thing is you talked about she was in HR and in finance, and, I'm like, you talked about you solve problems. Like, be a problem solver. What is that? And she was like, I guess it's creative. So my homework assignment for her was go home and write down all the ways, like observe yourself, write down all the ways that you found yourself, that you found that you're creative. And she came back the next week with 3 pages, all alphabetized because she was logical. Seriously, 3 pages of alphabetized all the ways that she was creative. And the theme of our next 4 months of sessions was, oh my God, there's another way that I'm creative. Oh my God, there's another way that I'm creative. Like, she opened up her mind, opened up her reticular activation system to see that she was creative, and no longer did she say, I'm not creative. What kind of world does that open up?
It's amazing. I mean, I could tell you dozens of stories that we've had that kind of response with kids, in high school, with the self-mastery, around the self-mastery. And it's just like, it brings tears to your eyes when they say, oh my gosh, wow, it's so powerful. Well, on that happy note, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And if somebody wants to get a hold of you, how would they find you?
Yeah, so I'm all over the social webs.
Okay.
So my website is www.roar.consulting.
Okay.
No.com, just .consulting. But I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me, Jason Tracy. Facebook. I have the podcast. Like I said, you can find me on YouTube under Roar Nation. Coffee and Grit is the
podcast. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, great. Well, it's been so energizing to be in your space.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
I've loved this conversation. Thank you for having me on.
I do too. I'm going to go eat faces.
Yeah, let's go. That's the coolest thing is like I have people, just the other day, some random guy that I've known for a while called me up. It's like, I was out and I climbed this mountain and I got to the top of the mountain. I didn't even know what to say. So I just screamed, eat faces. And it's like, it just came out. I'm like, that's a cool story. Thanks for telling me.
That's a cool story, right? So on that happy note, go out and live your good fat life. Thank you.